Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Lisa Nestor. Lisa is a fintech expert and chief strategy officer at AirTM. Under her watchful eye, the company AirTM has successfully facilitated over 26 million transactions and expanded commerce access to international business, large and small, creating a user-friendly tool benefiting millions of people worldwide. And Lisa also passionate about innovation, implementation, and strategy within the shifting fintech landscape. So, Lisa, thank you for being our guest today on our Risk Management Show podcast.
Thank you so much, Boris. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's my pleasure. So, I believe that we will have a very thoughtful conversation on the topic of the need for proper cross-border payment infrastructure that support digital economy. So, Lisa, but before that, could you please tell us a short story about yourself, your career path, and what brought you to where you are right now, and maybe some touching point, what you guys are up to these days at IRTM?
Sure. Yeah, it would be my pleasure. So I'm dialing in from Los Angeles, California, where I'm based. I'm originally from North Carolina, spent most of my youth there. And then my first job out of North Carolina was as a Peace Corps volunteer with the United States Peace Corps. I was sent to Mauritania, West Africa, which is about as rural as it gets, we'll say, in the Saharan desert. And while I was there, the project I got involved in was a village savings and loan association. It's essentially a manual for how you can set up banking systems without a bank. And it was a hugely influential experience for me. And I got very interested in financial infrastructure and also the impact that access to the economy or financial products can have on individuals and businesses. So from there, I ended up moving to India and living in India for about 3 years, where I led research studies looking at microfinance or other kind of innovative financial products that were being launched in India at that time. It was kind of right after the peak of Grameen Bank and microfinance, if you remember. And so there was a lot going on, a really cool opportunity for me to see companies, sometimes government-based companies, sometimes private banks, trying to innovate and launch new financial products to serve the underserved. So I did that for a couple of years, and then eventually ended up in Los Angeles, where I earned a master's in business administration from UCLA. And at that point, I kind of thought I was going to get into more traditional work, but I guess I was lucky and I discovered fintech, and even more than fintech, I discovered digital assets and the blockchain industry. And while it was a far cry from maybe some of the more low-tech innovations I had been working on in India or Mauritania, the concept was really quite similar. This idea of supporting or building financial infrastructure that could be accessible to anyone and provide more kind of equality to the economy and open markets. So I had the pleasure of working at a blockchain foundation called the Stellar Development Foundation for about 5.5 years, where I led their ecosystem and partnerships team, essentially working with companies all over the world in the cross-border payment space and educating them and talking to them about digital assets and blockchain and how it could be used for cross-border payments. After about 5.5 years of that, I got a bit, what should we call it? I don't know, I was just looking for my next adventure. And so I left the company, but on my way out, I was introduced to AirTM. And AirTM was a user application, consumer-facing application that was leveraging the Stellar blockchain, but was kind of in very early stage. So they were a company that had been around for many years and had been very innovative in leveraging digital assets and blockchain, but for your everyday consumer, really not positioning the product as a crypto wallet, but positioning more as a PayPal alternative, right? So a much more kind of mass market play where they're really helping people do payments. And the fact that we're using digital assets or blockchain is just, it's the technology we used, right? And so I've been with the company almost 2 years now, helping them to both think about their position in the market, their competitors, but also helping the company to really evolve its infrastructure. And a big part of that has been replacing more kind of legacy cross-border payment infrastructure and tooling with very digital asset blockchain focused infrastructure. So, we serve hundreds of thousands of users on a monthly basis all over the world, helping them make money online, get paid from companies all over the world. And so it's great, very fulfilling in that regard, and very cool for me personally that I kind of went up the technology stack, having started with a blockchain and now working with a company that kind of leverages that technology.
Fantastic. So very interesting explanation. So you went to the developing world, understood the needs of this unbanked people, and then back to United States, you implemented this in the new paradigms, so black blockchain, and now you're working on this payment sort of PayPal company based on blockchain. Is it correct?
Totally. That's a great summary. I should steal that one.
Wow. So I actually use PayPal, and I've been using it as an entrepreneur. But it's wonderful. But I think the technology way 20 years before. But if there is something that can replace PayPal based on blockchain, I'm glad to start working on it. Is it possible to kind of facilitate payments between major kind of organizations the same way as a PayPal?
Yes, it is. So AirTM started originally as just a consumer application. So there was not really a business side. And the company is about 8 years old, and it was focused on giving people in Latin America, particularly in countries with failing economies or hyperinflation, the ability to convert their local currency into digital dollars and kind of save that. And that was, very innovative at the time, kind of democratizing access to dollars, particularly for people with difficult local currencies. And so the company did that business for about 4 or 5 years. And one of the ways that the company supports that business is actually quite innovative. AirTM developed its own last mile payment rail infrastructure. If you're a payments person, you know that it's all about the last mile rail, that's always kind of the difficult part with doing a transaction, especially in an emerging market or, a developing country. And so AirTM built a marketplace where local individuals could register and be approved to be what we call a local cashier. And AirTM's marketplace then allows a user who wants to withdraw money in Argentina to get matched with a local Argentinian cashier who is willing to execute the last mile payment for digital dollars that they get inside of AirTM, or vice versa. Perhaps the cashier has digital dollars on AirTM and a local person in Argentina wants to buy them. And so the cashier will accept their local currency, and then their digital dollars will be released. So that infrastructure has been really powerful for us in being able to support payments and support users in countries and economies that are typical typically not easy to do payments in. At a minimum, transactions can take a couple days. They tend to be really expensive. And so we kind of built a layer above legacy infrastructure, which allows us to go very fast. So the point of that is we built that business for a while and then noticed that in our marketplace, there were more and more users that were trying to sell PayPal, sell their PayPal dollars. And we were, like, that's not how we originally anticipated this marketplace working. We thought it would just be kind of local currency. But what we discovered when interviewing these users is that for many of them, if they were in Argentina or if they were in Kenya or if they were in Colombia, withdrawing through PayPal could be very expensive for them. And it could take a lot of time. And it was actually cheaper and faster for them to get paid by a business in PayPal and then basically take that PayPal dollar and withdraw it through AirTM instead of the native PayPal rails, because we oftentimes through our peer marketplace can execute a transaction in 10 minutes or less. It's very fast infrastructure. And so from there, we started kind of exploring like, okay, how do we help our users pay even less money? Like, how do we remove this jump from PayPal? And so we started approaching enterprises directly and saying, hey, we have this community of users all over the world. We have great onboarding specialists. If you as a business need to distribute cross-border payments, we're a great option for you as an alternative to PayPal. And so over the last 3 years, we've built up a great business. I think, PayPal's been around for a long time, as you said, and they obviously their infrastructure has been developed more than ours, but we're particularly good in some kind of verticals. So number one, if you need to distribute or collect a lot of payments from difficult or less developed markets, as I mentioned before, a country like Argentina, or just where there's a lot of currency volatility, or the local banking infrastructure is slow and expensive, we're great. Because no matter what PayPal does, they're still dependent on that local banking infrastructure to kind of allow for last mile withdrawals. Number two is we're very good at doing small payments. So if you are on PayPal and you need to withdraw $1,000, $2,000, okay, maybe the fee doesn't impact you so much. But if you need to withdraw $20, which is really meaningful in some places, you're just going to get totally, destroyed on the fees there. And so that's a place where AirTM really shines. And so some of our biggest enterprises are companies that on a weekly basis need to send out tens of thousands of small payments to individuals who are working online. And so that's where we are now. Obviously, we're continuing to grow and invest in our infrastructure, but we think the combination of digital assets to move money between people and then increasingly innovative last mile rails like our peer-to-peer marketplace and other third-party partners that we work with is going to position us to increasingly be competitive with platforms like PayPal.
Yeah, interesting. So I use cross-border payments to Philippines. Use Wise,
Yeah. Wise is another one. Yes, they're also, so Philippines is a market that we're in. It's a newer one because we were traditionally more in Latin America. But exactly, so you as a business or as an individual could basically create an AirTM account, and then you're going to fund your account and then send it to whoever your receiver is in the Philippines. And then what they would receive, I think, I'm curious, when you send with Wise, does it go directly to the individual's bank account in the Philippines, or do they receive the money in Wise?
I'm not sure. I think she has an account in Wise, but I don't know. I just send and I see the currency exchange rate, and I check with other, and always better invoice.
Mhm.
So I send
Sure.
to, yeah, but I'm not sure. I have my I have my account invoice, but I didn't feel it. I just do it from my bank account.
Sure. So yeah, you can do the same thing. I guess the reason I ask is, and I can tie this to risk actually. One kind of innovative thing that AirTM does is we send cross-border payments, we'll call it wallet to wallet,
Mm-hmm.
and the payment is always in digital dollars. We leverage USDC, which
Yeah,
is a digital dollar created by
stable
Circle.
coin.
So if you were sending a payment to your, your friend in the Philippines, they would actually receive digital dollars in their AirTM wallet. So
Oh.
what that means is that we as a company don't have FX exposure. We don't have um, money sitting in a bank account in the Philippines that we have to manage as part of our
Mhm.
treasury to
Yeah,
support that
exactly.
last mile payment. The person in the Philippines receives digital dollars in their wallet. And from there, they say, okay, I want to withdraw this to my bank, or I want to send this to a friend, or I want to save this. So it's a slightly different model. It's actually
Yeah.
quite different because companies like Wise and MoneyGram or Western
Mm-hmm.
Union, they make a lot of their money off of that FX. So
Yeah.
we just have this belief that there's a consumer trend to receive dollars and get paid in dollars as opposed to just immediately have it go to your local bank account. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something that we support for our users.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I know that Wise, they established kind of their own branches in all over the place, and they have an account, but you using stable coins, so you use USDC, right?
We use stable coins, and we've basically we have a much less integrated stack. So Wise is the one who's providing the liquidity in the treasury. They're the one who's executing the payments, and then they're also the consumer application layer, right? AirTM is really just the consumer application layer. And then underneath that, we're using blockchain and digital assets to send the payment. So these are, this is open source technology. And then we also use kind of local third-party companies to process any local payments. So we're kind of have a less vertically integrated stack, which means that we really just focus on consumer experience, brand, building out the ecosystem, and then kind of leverage these other platforms.
Right, interesting. Yeah, because
Yeah.
Argentina is a good example. They have inflation about 100%. They new election. The guy wants to
Dollarize.
skip dollarize and skip
Yeah.
pesos. So they have two or three official exchange rates. So how do you guys work with Argentina? Interesting case.
Well, we could spend a whole hour just on
Yeah.
that. But yeah, Argentina is I mean, if you are someone like me who's like kind of an economy nerd, like Argentina is just really interesting and everything that's going on there right now. So we have essentially two rates that we provide in AirTM. And I always think of our wallet, the wallet that you would receive a payment in, as kind of being like an airport. So we want you to get your money, and then we want to give you really as many options as possible that are good to then withdraw your money. So we have in Argentina two kind of like two major options for users. They can withdraw their money through a local payment service provider in Argentina, and that company will kind of, verify them, do their KYC, and then once a relationship is established, process that transaction. And their rate is the blue rate. So, and honestly, it is quite complicated. That rate moves up and down and changes some, and I don't even know what will happen to it once this kind of election continues, depending on how it goes. But it's basically the government mandated or the government controlled more floating rate there. And so users will have the choice of doing that. Or in our peer-to-peer marketplace, we call that the digital dollar rate. And so the digital dollar rate, it's more of, it's not based on the dollar, it's based on digital assets and crypto markets. So there's kind of less direct connection to kind of local banking rates there. And that is really the market clearing rate. So it is established on our platform based on other markets that we look at, where there's also Argentina and digital dollar trading going on. So we kind of watch a couple markets. And then we also look at our own activity on the platform. So our rates can adjust based on how much kind of supply or demand there is for people who are willing to transact with each other at the current rate. So it's kind of, I would say in Argentina, this digital dollar rate, the rate at which an asset like USDC or USDT Tether will trade at, it's the rate that you'll see on a platform like Binance or Bitso. And it's a bit different from your dollar peso rate locally. So we provide both on our platform, and the consumer can choose. And sometimes one is better, sometimes the other is better. It kind of depends what direction you're going as well. And as I mentioned, we are not ourselves ever providing the currency locally. We're matching you with another vendor who will then process that transaction.
Interesting. So, for example, my simple use case, I'm going as a tourist to Argentina. For example, I have euros or dollars, and I want to have a better rate for me in pesos in Argentina. What are my steps to do?
Sure.
With your...
So you would fund your AirTM account, and then you would go to Argentina, and then you would say, I want to withdraw, my USDC on AirTM for local pesos. Typically, we don't do a lot of like cash withdrawals right now, although we are close to integrating MoneyGram. Are you familiar with that company? They launched a new product last year where you can withdraw USDC through all of their MoneyGram locations. So I think that would be an ideal scenario where you go to Argentina, you go in, you say, I want to pick up cash at MoneyGram, and then you can just go to a MoneyGram location and get that cash. That's not quite live yet on our platform. For now, most of the time, that last mile transaction isn't cash. It's going to be into some type of local account or wallet, but it's still possible. You can kind of get matched with a peer and then get cash. What would also be great is when we eventually have a card. So hopefully that's around the corner. Yeah, so that you could just spend your currency. But I would say the use case you just described is something that we aim for, but it's not our most traditional use case, because typically the person who wants to get money, they are a local resident. So they have some type of local account, whether it's an e-wallet or it's a bank account. And so they're usually withdrawing their AirTM funds into that. Whereas a tourist doesn't have a local account, so they usually want cash, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Once you get to Argentina, you want some cash. So So that will be around the corner, but that's kind of the idea. MoneyGram would just be another option for our users, like another plane in the airport that they could take to get money out locally. And in that instance, there would actually be 3 local rates provided. MoneyGram would be posting an exchange rate for you, and you can withdraw through them. We would give you a local direct-to-bank provider with an exchange rate. You can withdraw through them. Or you could go through AirTM's peer-to-peer marketplace, where there's the digital dollar rate.
Mm. And peer-to-peer, you mean is exchange between wallets?
Yeah, exactly. Between wallets. That's right. So peer-to-peer is both parties are on AirTM. One has been approved, gone through some extra compliance stuff and been approved as a cashier. And then we basically facilitate 2 individuals transacting wallet to wallet with each other.
So it's still not cash. It's just
yeah, but sorry, I guess the
asset.
wallet can be anything. So for example, in Kenya, you can use our peer-to-peer and go from AirTM digital dollars to mobile money minutes, or you can go to Gcash in the Philippines, or you can go to like any other third-party platform. Cash is just difficult because there's some security risk with it, right? So you don't want to be facilitating like a cash exchange on the street. We want everybody to be careful. But any kind of digital wallet or digital account locally, we can match you with the cashier who can give you a payment there.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you a personal point of view. What is the major misconception in your field of digital payment that you are strongly disagree with?
That's a big question. I guess I think a strong misconception around kind of I think a strong misconception is that cryptocurrency or blockchain is kind of this funny money and, not really, doesn't really matter for the real economy or things like payments. I certainly understand why that misconception is there. I think the use case that has dominated this technology for the last 10 years has been trading and speculation, right? And so a lot of people, when they think of blockchain or, digital assets, they're not thinking about things like cross-border payments. But I think they are hugely impactful for cross-border payments and really are going to, in the same way that the internet and email totally changed the way that we sent communications to each other. I think digital assets and blockchain will do the same for payments. So yeah, and I mean, I guess it's not such a misconception. You've seen PayPal launch in the last few months their own stablecoin, PayPal USD. So one of the biggest players in the space really disrupting themselves by launching that. And yeah, I guess maybe tied to that misconception, I think people outside of the digital asset space, they think that when they think of blockchain or they think of crypto, they think of like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, but really, our company runs 100% on blockchain, and we only use digital dollars. And some of the most popular and most used digital currencies are USDC and USDT Tether. And so, yeah, I think digital dollars, or this idea of digital fiat that's being issued on a open, decentralized ledger, it's a really big deal. And it is going to be hugely impactful for payment companies, whether that's settlement, like just how they, as you said, Wise has treasury accounts all over the world.
Exactly.
That is so much capital that they have to maintain on, a daily basis just to support their operations. And I think 10 years from now, you're going to not see very many people using that model anymore. You're going to see much more real-time settlement, much more leveraging of FX markets in the last mile. And, maybe even more and more companies similar to PayPal, maybe Wise, kind of issuing their own digital assets that users kind of have more freedom with, that they can send to each other with more freedom, or they can hold, and so those types of things. So yeah, I guess from where I'm at, I see a ton of innovation going around cross-border payments with this technology. And I think most consumers don't really know that's happening.
Oh, interesting. So a lot of new things for me too. And for what are your kind of ideas in the development of your field? What we will see in the future?
Let's see. Well, I think that there's a lot of stuff going on. Some of the things I would like to see more of is, I think we're increasingly going to see wallet-based, products for consumers, where individuals, especially in some of these kind of non-Western countries outside of the US, outside of maybe Europe and the UK, having a digital wallet where they're able to access and hold and use digital currencies, and maybe even get paid in digital currencies. A big trend that AirTM is leaning on is this idea of individuals all around the world wanting to get online to earn digital dollars. And the mental model you can think of before is immigration and remittances. So 50 years ago, there was still a desire to earn digital dollars. I think it is deeply human to want to have the best access to the economy and the best earning opportunity that you can. So if you live in a country that doesn't have a really strong economy, or doesn't have, all of the market opportunities that the dollar economy has, guess what? You're going to be thinking about moving to the United States, right? You want to, like so many other people, you're going to physically move yourself in order to access that dollar economy and dollar earning opportunities. And now you don't actually have to move to America to be able to earn and participate in the dollar economy. And I think this is quite like revolutionary when you start thinking about money and political systems. But I am also a believer that sometimes with technology, it's kind of like a genie in a bottle. Like once it's out and people know it exists, you can't really put it back in the bottle again. So AirTM's primary user is that it's individuals from, Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, Kenya, Egypt, all of these places that are getting online to earn digital dollars. And that's why it's very meaningful for them to have this wallet account where they can hold those digital dollars outside of their local bank account, right? And then what they need is great payment rails in order to take that money home, or if they want to send it somewhere else. So I think that's a really big trend. I think the world is going to, kind of have to think through some new questions that we didn't have before. A country like Nigeria, there's a incredibly young, incredibly technical population that likely has a deep desire to earn dollars. So how does a government like Nigeria start thinking about this? Like, how does it want to stop its population from participating in the dollar economy and bringing that money home? I don't think so. But the way that they tax, the way that they facilitate FX, like the way that, you know, the paths that they have for their citizens to move in and out of that global economy, it has to evolve. And so I think there's going to be, just a lot of interesting discussion and policy in that regard. So I think that's a big trend. What you can do on top of that then is once you have a wallet and you've kind of facilitated this onboarding of people into this new type of infrastructure, there's a lot of cool products that you can do. So kind of going back to my my financial inclusion days, there's a lot of work going on right now and what we call like decentralized lending pools or credit pools, where individuals can have access to smart kind of algorithmic contracts that would say, okay, you've got, you know, 100 USDC in your AirTM wallet. You could earn 5% interest if you want to put this into a public lending pool. And you're not going through a bank to do that. You're going through kind of an open smart contract on a blockchain ledger. And so you know, maybe that doesn't mean anything to you because like you've got great banks and great savings infrastructure where you are. But for somebody in Argentina, being able to earn 5% interest on their USDC, that's a big deal, right? And so having the ability to participate in these kind of like open public lending pools, I think is very exciting. And also the reverse, being able to borrow, which I think is really exciting. So basically, through the development of this technology, and I think honestly, it's still a bit early days, but my goal and my vision would be that, you know, somebody in Argentina or Egypt or Kenya will suddenly have 10x, 100x access to financial services and financial products because they're not having to participate just in their local market and local financial services. Now, through this wallet that connects them to the global economy and global markets, there's a kind of easy to access, you know, money market fund that they can borrow $100 from. And you on the other side are earning 5% interest on that. And so basically we're just kind of like democratizing and opening up these capital pools, lending pools, and making them kind of more automated. So I think that is really exciting. And I would love to see AirTM launching kind of like micro lending or interest-bearing accounts for its users because I think they want them.
Yeah. Let's. I would like to ask you about risk because you touched about lending and borrowing because we know all this story about Celsius and FTX and they all had this high rent, high interest, what is it, borrowing rates and earning possibilities 30% when there was official interest rate was 0. So there are a lot of hype and fraud involved in this industry as well.
I love that you asked that question. And yes, I don't think you can ever eliminate risk. You just kind of package it in a different way, right? So to be clear, the borrowing and lending that I just described would be what we call decentralized. So in the Celsius example, it was not, right? People were borrowing or lending through Celsius. And so that institution was able to kind of hide some mismanagement of capital and some kind of bad decisions that they made around who they were lending their users funds to and the losses that they incurred. So, I'll call that counterparty risk. So with Celsius, even though you're using crypto assets, it wasn't really, it was still very centralized. The same thing with FTX, by the way. It's, people are kind of holding the digital assets, but they're not really using them in a decentralized, transparent way. They were sending it to a company, and that company made bad decisions, and that company, acted incorrectly. And so they had counterparty risk, and there was a ton of, really horrible losses there. What I'm talking about still has risk, definitely still has risk, but it's a different type of risk. So in this instance, when everybody has their own wallet, everybody has their own account on the blockchain, right? You have this ability to then participate in decentralized credit pools that are native to that blockchain, that are not managed by any institution. They're a smart contract. They're a kind of programmed, a programmed operation, and you can put money in, you can take money out, but there's a very clear set of rules, and there's a lot of transparency. So these are the types of products that I am thinking about more for our users. Now, what's the risk there? Well, one, there's just the risk that this stuff is new. And so, you don't know what you don't know. And so there's always a fear that, oh, could it be hacked? Or, and we see this in the news. Can somebody kind of find a vulnerability in the contract and exploit it? And so, those types of risks are definitely there. Or, just a risk that some kind of market shock could happen that could completely kind of affect the lending and borrowing rates and kind of collapse this type of stuff. So that's totally there. My approach to this is to move slowly, do a ton of due diligence, and then do everything we can to de-risk for our users. And so, what does that look like? We are not, as a company, going to go after like the highest interest pool and, offer that to our clients, right? So I think we would want to start with projects that have been around for a little while, have some customer usage, have shown that they work and can go. And then I think we absolutely have to know, like, who developed this, do our own kind of code audits and make sure that we feel comfortable with the contracts that are developed. And then what I am kind of encouraging is for companies in the ecosystem that really want to see the growth and development of this type of technology, and who have every incentive to kind of see that growth, to step up and try to ensure some of these initial projects. I think that there's capital out there that can be, kind of deployed, not for borrowing, but for ensuring the borrowing in these early stages. And so that's kind of the strategy we're going after is, how can we keep it simple, start very moderate, but then also, build some parachutes for ourselves and our users, because it is new. And while there's huge demand, we also have a fiduciary responsibility to not expose our users to too much risk. So that's what I'm thinking.
Also, I noticed that about some volatility in blockchain interest platforms. There was also value of USDC, and USDT was not exactly $1 to $2, right? So it's also risk.
Yeah, Boris, you're very in the news here. So
Yeah,
yes,
but I'm running a global risk community. We have a risk management show.
yeah. I will tell you, I will never forget that Friday. It happened on a Friday. I remember it was around 2 or 3 p.m. Los Angeles time. And suddenly we started seeing the DPEG is what we call it. And that was a wild time. So yeah, that was, I mean, frankly, that was a huge shock for us as a company. Um, it was it was a lot. So a lot of different risk there to kind of unpack, but there is counterparty risk. That's another example of counterparty risk. In that moment, it felt, however, like bigger than the counterparty. It felt like an industry wide. And then if you remember, a couple of weeks later, we had Silicon Valley Bank. It,
Yeah.
it felt like kind of almost a systemic banking risk that we were facing. You know, and you kind of say in those situations, like, what can you do? What's really cool about AirTM is this peer-to-peer marketplace is actually incredibly resilient. You can think of it as like bamboo or something like that, where it has the ability to allow for rates to move around, and because it's so focused around the real market clearing rate, and individuals, as long as we're appropriately tracking, like the depeg might happen, but we can keep the money moving, right? So it's not an instance where it's just going to be like, shut off, your value drops and you can't do anything about it. So yeah, for us, we have a very close relationship with Circle, the issuers of USDC, and we invest in that relationship because we are very much exposed to risk if they have another instance of the DPEG, which I think is very unlikely. But it's our job to make sure that we are very aware of everything that's going on with that business, just kind of like how they're doing. We track USDC very closely. So I think it's just for us to understand the health kind of this critical strategic partner of ours is very important. And then, we actually, after that DPEG incident, we created a whole strategy document of like, what do we do if there is a DPEG? So we already have our emergency plan in place to make sure we know how to like let rates adjust, what kind of communication we need to do with users. Like, is there an emergency brake we pull if something goes, over a certain amount or under a certain amount? So as we say in the United States, like the Boy Scouts, always be prepared. And sometimes like that's really the best you can do. These kind of like black swan events, you can't really stop them from happening. All you can do is try to push yourself to plan and think that far in advance so that you have some idea of what to do in case that scenario comes. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we are already out of our time, but it's very, very interesting interview. So maybe last question, if we summarize this interview for someone who is listening, would like to walk away with 1 or 2 major takeaways, what would it be?
Sure. I think cross-border payments is dynamic and changing, and digital assets and blockchain are going to be a big part of the future. And if you're looking for a way to send money around the world as an individual or a business, check out AirTM. We are a really innovative and compelling solution. And we may, especially if you have an audience that or a customer base that you're using PayPal for, we may be able to give you better rates and better times. So check us out.
Oh, fantastic. So that's why all my questions. Again, thank you, Lisa, for your thoughtful interview, and I hope we will cooperate with your company on maybe more interviews, maybe more kind of marketing cooperation and see what's, because it's very innovative and very promising future in this crypto cross-border payment.
Totally. Thank you, Boris. I would love that. And thank you. It's been a great interview. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.